Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another video. So just to start with, guys, today equity markets are closed because it's Good Friday, being Easter Sunday, obviously on Sunday. So we're not going to see any price action from the equity markets today. And I think maybe we all deserve a little bit of a cooling off period, as things have been pretty crazy in terms of markets, but also in terms of narrative. And to update you on what's happened most recently, we've seen this from Donald Trump basically saying if he asks Jerome Powell to leave, then Jerome Powell will leave. And he's already potentially in private talks with Kevin Walsh to succeed Jerome Powell as the head of the Federal Reserve. Basically, Trump wants Powell to bring down rates, if you don't know already, and Powell is sticking strong to his guns that he doesn't want to or he doesn't need to, whatever that might be. I would argue that it's a political decision because based on the metrics that being Powell used to basically say that, we're going to cut rates when unemployment goes over 4% and when inflation comes back to our 2% target. And both of those things, well, forward-looking inflation is less than 2% if you use true inflation. And I think if you use just CPI, I think it's like 2.7. So I think it is roughly around where they wanted it to be. And unemployment is over 4%. Yeah, he's not cutting rates. So based on his previous rhetoric, I think that what he's doing now is probably political. And Elizabeth Warren basically said, if Chair Powell's fired by the United States president, the markets will crash. And I think that that's also kind of a political statement and shows the political stance of Powell. Although in this case, I don't think she's particularly wrong. Although I don't like Warren at all. I think she's the devil when it comes to innovation, trying to protect legacy, the legacy players in the background of that video there, very fittingly, is JP Morgan, who I presume she in talks with quite a lot. But I don't think she's particularly wrong. I don't know if the markets would crash if they sacked Powell, but I do think that people would be very much more uncertain if Powell was sacked, at least again in the short term, and that is something that could bring us a little flush down to the lows that we've discussed here and that we'll look at here in terms of liquidity. That could be a narrative. Powell gets sacked, quick dump down, and then probably resume to the upside, because what I would then think is the Fed will start to cut rates and an influx of dollars will come into the market or loosening of liquidity and monetary conditions in the US. With that being said, like the last 3 or 4 days, the Bitcoin price has just traded within a range of about 3% out of 5 days, that is. No, everyone's pretty uncertain, but they're kind of saying that Bitcoin price is fair where it is, at least for now. So that's something to consider. Again, liquidity is so deep above us. I don't think it's going to take much for us to squeeze up to the 92k region. Probably just need to break this 86. If we break 88k, we'll be at 92, 93k before you know it. It's just whether we get this flush down to get rid of this liquidity first or after, or whether we leave it. I'm not saying Jerome Powell is going to get sacked. I'm not forward forecasting or trying to predict anything like that because I have no idea of the political agenda of the US in terms of behind closed doors. And I also do personally think that at some point, Besant says that him and Powell go for breakfast once a week. So I presume they discuss a lot and a lot more. And a lot of this is probably just public posturing. Another kind of positive thing is, just last night, one of the last things we saw was Trump said he basically was looking at making a deal with China, and they're discussing. So who knows what's going on? And it's nice to have the stock market closed for a day where we can all just take a breather and relax for a weekend. And that's essentially it in terms of news. Yesterday, I think I discussed this on my YouTube. I'm not exactly sure though, but Bloomberg reporting on Ripple's Hidden Road acquisition and their new FINRA license. I wrote about this in the newsletter again this weekend. I also wrote about a few things I'm going to talk about now, but I basically think that this is a bigger purchase than most people believe. It's going to make Ripple and the XRP ledger a space for institutions to conduct in DeFi activities, decentralized financial activities, as they've acquired a prime broker. So we've looked at leverage, we've discussed my narrative, um, and now I just want to just talk to you about quickly gold. I've written about this in the newsletter as well. I've talked about I think gold looks very parabolic here, like blow off toppy, and I do think that at some point, I've been wrong about this as well though, so just bear that in mind. I do think that at some point, probably very soon, that gold will start to roll over. I know this doesn't really make sense in terms of the global narrative, and I don't mean roll over in terms of completely crash, although I don't know, but it could. I mean just short-term pullback, and that pullback will be where we get the reprieve or the upward price squeeze or move in Bitcoin. And that's what I've written about in the newsletter, and I've shown you why I think that, so definitely go and check that out. As I said, I have been wrong about this recently, so could I continue to be wrong there? Potentially, but it's not been many times in the past where we've had such an aggressive move to the upside for gold. It's pretty vertical if we look at it, especially if we take it to the daily time frame. And at some point when you get these moves like this, especially when they get more and more like parabolic, which you could see if you just drew a parabolic curve in there, it may continue higher, but then at some point it's going to roll over, and quite quickly some of that liquidity I think will cycle through to the crypto space. That's basically what I'm looking for. And with that being said, which cryptos do I think are going to do well? I've been talking to you guys about XRP, and I put this chart out there this morning, basically showing that it's going to take us back to the 3-day time frame. On the 3-day time frame, when we had this bullish cross, a confirmed bullish cross because we've wicked above it a few times, but once we had this bullish cross on the 3-day RSI, that was when we had this last move from 55 cents to $3. And if we did a measured move from holding these previous range highs with the 3-day bullish cross, it would take us out towards the $10 time frame. And this isn't a time prediction, it's just showing you how fast and aggressively these things move when they move, and based on the catalyst potentially of a 3-day bullish cross for XRP. Bitcoin dominance has been gaining, still continuing to gain, and is now only a couple of % away from where previous alt seasons have started. I don't know what the narrative will be for the rotation of Bitcoin into alts, but I do think that will come, and we're 5.8% away from where that has happened previously. I'd love it to be that Bitcoin starts to really rally here, like heavily rally, and alts go with it, but just not as fast. And then Bitcoin gets to that 68 to 74%. Realistically, it'd be best if Bitcoin went to say 200. This is in a perfect world, not a prediction. But let's say Bitcoin goes to 200, 250k, and Bitcoin dominance is at 74%, and all alts have rallied around Bitcoin, and then the rotation happens. That's the perfect scenario for crypto and altcoins if you're an altcoin holder, which, as you know, I am. Other than that, we have to just... The reason I'm so bullish on XRP is, one, because I'm biased because I have a big bag, obviously, and the other one is because XRP dominance is still holding at 4.6% whilst Bitcoin dominance is climbing. So Bitcoin dominance climbing means it's taking strength away from the rest of the market, yet XRP dominance is still holding strong and high. XRP versus Bitcoin is still holding previous resistance as support, but still banging its head against resistance as well. And I think it's only a matter of time until this range breaks and the pattern continues, and we still gain against Bitcoin. We've looked at this chart many times I've just inverted the chart now on an inverted chart, and it's so much easier to look at from here because you can just see that if we lose this level here, then you should dump all the way down to this level, which would be, so we've got about 20% that we need to outperform to get back to the support in inverted, which is in this case resistance. And then once we break that level, you're probably looking at another 220% outperformance against Bitcoin. And I'd be looking at this level for a minimum target here for XRP against Bitcoin. So you're looking at from where we are now to where I think the minimum target is against Bitcoin for XRP is a further 289% against Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin doubles and XRP doubles in line with Bitcoin, let's say XRP would then be at $455 and it does another 289%. That obviously puts XRP at like $12, $13, $14, which would make sense for me. And I also think that the XRP against ETH chart looks very dumpy and probably will continue to fall, and that's on the inverted scale. And then if you turn it to a normal chart, like the non-inverted chart, once we get the break above this resistance, our last real level of resistance here, I can see us really heading up to set new highs against ETH, at least on this trading view chart. So guys, I can't say any more than what I've been saying for the last few days. I think the market is correctly pricing based on uncertainty, but mispricing based on forward-looking indicators. And I think forward-looking, we see a strong rally for crypto out the back of this uncertainty. So I think it will only be a matter of time until that starts to get priced in with the liquidity prospects around the world, and also potential rotations from uncertain risk off, I guess, assets into more risk on, and what's going to be the best performing asset in sort of a neutral world. Well, with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave a comment in the comment section. Peace up, A-Town down, as Crypto Insight UK would say. Thank you for watching.